All right, everyone, buckle up. Because today we're diving headfirst into the excerpts you sent us from Legend of the Obverse book.
Should be fun. We've got chapter bits and pieces, a foreword, and even an epilogue. Someone's eager to hook their rears, it seems.
You can say that again. This author isn't messing around. I mean, check out this opening line. A group of unlikely heroes would fight on behalf of us all in a nightmarish adventure that reshaped the very fabric of our own world.
Wow. Talk about setting the stakes high from page one.
Right. It's like, bam! Welcome to the story. Be ready for anything. What do you think? Is that a good strategy, opening with such a huge claim?
It's definitely bold. I mean, this author's making a promise right there, connecting the fate of their world to our own. You don't see that every day. It's like they're saying, hey, this matters, even to you.
And it's not just the first line either, right? This author is dropping these phrases like little bombs, demonic whispers, dreamlike vision. Oh, and this one really got me. Overwhelming static blur.
Ooh, yeah. That last one's interesting. Visually, I can't even, what does that even look like?
Exactly. It makes you want to read more just to try and picture it.
For sure. It's like the author's deliberately trying to unsettle us, make us question what's real and what's not, which can be a really effective way of building suspense.
Speaking of unsettling, can we talk about these chapter titles for a second? I mean, Eclipse, okay, I get it. But then Strange New World and Under the Black Moon, those aren't your typical fantasy chapter headings.
Absolutely not. It's like the author's giving us these little clues, these hints of what's to come. Eclipse, for example, that immediately evokes a sense of darkness, of things being hidden, like something's coming, something big.
And Strange New World, that has to be more than just a literal new world, right? It feels symbolic, like a shift in perspective.
Totally. Like the characters and maybe even the reader are about to have their understanding of reality totally flipped on its head.
Oh, and don't even get me started on Under the Black Moon. That just screams hidden knowledge, forbidden magic, something like that.
It's like a breadcrumb trail, leading us deeper into the heart of the story.
And speaking of the story, we've got excerpts that introduce us to 5 of the main characters. And let me tell you, they are about as unlikely a group of heroes as you're ever going to find. So let's meet these unlikely heroes. First up, we've got Guilliman. And the excerpt right off the bat tells us he's haunted by some past betrayal. Okay, standard fantasy fare so far, right? But then it says he's carrying jars of ash. Jars, plural.
Jars of ash. Now that's an image. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Totally. Whose ashes are we talking about here? And why so many? It feels like a burden he's carrying, both literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of good writing, right?
Yeah.
It's not just what the author tells us, it's what they leave unsaid. The spaces they leave for us to fill with our own imaginations.
Right. It's like a little mystery right there in the character introduction. Okay, next up we've got Balthazar. And from what I gathered, he's on some kind of quest for redemption. There's mention of a village and a name, Asmodeus, but the excerpt doesn't really go into detail. What do you make of that?
Well, the name Asmodeus is interesting. It has roots in demonology, often associated with temptation and desire. So right away, that gives us some clues about Balthazar's past, right?
Ooh, like maybe he gave into some kind of temptation and now he's trying to make amends?
Exactly. It sets up this really intriguing internal conflict. He's seeking redemption, but from what? And at what cost? These are the questions that keep you turning the pages.
For sure. Okay, moving on to Micaeus. He's described as a priest, which, okay, we see priests in fantasy all the time. But there's a twist. This priest carries a magical warhammer.
A magical warhammer called Lucerine. And as if that wasn't enough, the hammer speaks.
Wait, hold on. A talking hammer? I mean, I'm all for magical objects, but that seems like a recipe for disaster, even for a priest.
Oh, absolutely. It introduces this whole other layer of complexity to his character. Is he guided by faith? Or by the whispers of a potentially dangerous artifact? We don't know yet, but I'm hooked.
Right. Like, is the hammer a force for good or evil? Or maybe a bit of both.
Okay, and we haven't even gotten to Blaze and Thorinir yet. Glaze, from the excerpt, he's our resident magic user. Missing an eye. Fixated on some artifact he came across. Sound familiar?
Well, the missing eye is a classic trope in fantasy literature, often symbolizing a sacrifice of some kind.
Oh, totally. Like he traded an eye for knowledge or power or something like that. It makes you wonder what he's willing to sacrifice for whatever secrets this artifact holds. Exactly. And then there's Thorinir. Poor Thorinir, labeled a family degenerate and sold into captivity by his own father. That's rough.
Talk about a tough break. It makes you wonder what he did to deserve that, right? Or maybe he didn't do anything. Maybe he was just misunderstood. Either way, it's a compelling backstory.
For sure. And it sets him up as an underdog, someone who's had to fight for everything he's ever had. You can't help but root for a character like that.
These characters, man, there's something else. But what really gets me about these excerpts is the world. This author knows how to build a world that just sucks you in.
No kidding.
Right.
Ritual sacrifices, cryptic messages, a place called the Coastal Wastes. It's like they took everything we love about fantasy and added a dash of nightmare fuel.
And how about that ritual sacrifice? Hundreds of people gathered in this massive cathedral, an eclipse happening overhead, and then, boom, only 5 survive.
Our 5 heroes, right.
Yeah.
Talk about being thrown into the fire.
It's like they're ripped from reality. One minute they're about to be sacrificed, the next they're in this white void, their senses going haywire. What do you think that means symbolically, that whole white void thing?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, white voids, they often represent a blank slate, right? Like a fresh start. Maybe it's a way for them to confront who they really are, stripped of everything they thought they knew.
Interesting. Okay, and what about the ones who didn't make it out of that cathedral?
Yeah.
The excerpts mention these faith-sworn, rounding up people left and right. They seem like bad news.
Yeah, they're a piece of work, those faith-sworn. Obsessed with sin and acting these rituals. It makes you wonder, who are they really serving? What's their end game?
Right. There's a line in one of the excerpts that sent chills down my spine. It says, the faith-sworn believe they're carrying out the will of a higher power.
That's the scary part about fanaticism, isn't it? When you believe you're doing the right thing, no matter the cost, it's like they've completely surrendered their free will.
Okay, and then there's this whole thing with Orn Seiso, pops up out of nowhere, leaves these weird marks on our heroes, and then vanishes. Who is this guy?
He's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, that's for sure. But he's obviously playing some kind of role in all of this, like he's orchestrating events from behind the scenes.
Makes me think of a chess master, moving his pieces into position. It makes me want to see the bigger picture, you know?
Me too. And the Coastal Wastes? What about that place? It's like something out of a fever dream. Creatures that defy description. This brutal logic governing everything.
It's like the author took a wrong turn into a darker version of their own world. And yet there's this strange beauty to it, you know? Like even in the darkest corners, there's still wonder to be found.
That's what I love about fantasy. It allows us to explore these different facets of ourselves, the light and the dark.
For sure. So our heroes are headed to this place, New Alfheim. Any guesses on what they might find?
Who knows? A new threat? Maybe a moment of respite? Whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be fascinating.
This deep dive has been quite a ride. We've barely scratched the surface of this book, and I'm already hooked.
Me too. This author has created a world that begs to be explored.
To everyone listening, if you could choose, which of these characters would you follow into the unknown? Let us know. And until next time, keep exploring those fantastical worlds.